Global maritime security is heating up. U.S. naval forces have stepped up anti-smuggling operations at sea, while Venezuela has launched major military exercises. What does this mean for regional stability? Stay tuned as we break it down section by section. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's update focuses on a major development in the Caribbean region, where the United States Navy has carried out a series of anti-smuggling operations targeting boats suspected of transporting illegal narcotics. At the same time, Venezuela has launched a new phase of military drills along its coastline, signaling heightened preparedness. This combination of U.S. naval action and Venezuelan exercises is raising important questions about the balance of power, maritime security, and the possibility of further escalation in the region. The U.S. operations were confirmed by official defense sources who stated that multiple vessels involved in drug trafficking were intercepted and neutralized in international waters. These actions are part of Washington's broader effort to disrupt transnational criminal organizations operating in the Caribbean. According to analysts, the goal is to weaken drug cartels before they can move narcotics toward North America. Meanwhile, Venezuelan state media has shown footage of coastal defense drills, including anti-ship missile systems, naval patrols, and rapid deployment of troops. These exercises are described by Caracas as routine defensive measures, but given the timing immediately after U.S. naval strikes, they are widely viewed as a signal to Washington that Venezuela is ready to defend its maritime borders. In today's report, we will go through the timeline of these events, the strategic implications for both countries, the reactions from regional players, and what it could mean for global security going forward. Let's dive deeper. The first key element to understand is the U.S. Navy's operational posture in the Caribbean. Over the last several months, Washington has increased its naval and aerial presence in the region as part of an expanded counter-narcotics mission. This includes guided missile destroyers, surveillance aircraft, and Coast Guard cutters. Officials claim these deployments are necessary to interdict drug shipments before they enter U.S. waters. In the most recent operation, U.S. forces engaged boats suspected of smuggling cocaine and other illegal substances. The Pentagon reported that the vessels refused to comply with lawful orders to stop and were subsequently disabled. While no direct engagement with Venezuelan military assets was reported, the proximity of these events to Venezuelan waters has added to the tension. It is important to note that international law allows for interdiction of drug trafficking vessels in international waters under certain treaties and agreements. However, Caracas views these actions as a violation of its sovereignty, particularly when they take place near its exclusive economic zone. This legal gray area has been at the center of diplomatic disagreements for years. For Washington, the mission is as much about combating organized crime as it is about projecting deterrence. Analysts argue that these operations send a message to both cartels and hostile state actors that the U.S. is willing to act decisively to secure maritime routes. This messaging, however, is not always received positively by regional governments, leading to the next element: Venezuela's reaction. Venezuela's response to these operations has been swift and highly visible. Within days of the U.S. strikes on smuggling boats, President Nicolás Maduro ordered a full-scale series of coastal defense exercises. State television showed footage of troops mobilizing along beaches, missile batteries being positioned, and naval vessels patrolling key choke points. Maduro framed the exercises as necessary to safeguard the country's sovereignty. In a televised address, he stated that any foreign power attempting to violate our territorial integrity will be met with a firm response. These words were accompanied by live fire drills, which many observers see as a show of force designed to send a political message rather than prepare for imminent conflict. Military analysts believe that Caracas is using these drills to reassure its domestic audience and demonstrate that it is not intimidated by U.S. actions. Venezuela's armed forces have also conducted joint training with allied nations in the past, suggesting that this is part of a broader strategy to showcase readiness and deter intervention. Despite the dramatic visuals, it is worth noting that such exercises are often pre-planned and may have been scheduled before the latest U.S. operations. However, the timing has amplified their significance and created an impression of escalating tensions. The Venezuelan Ministry of Defense has emphasized that the drills are defensive in nature and are not aimed at provoking conflict. Still, the regional security environment remains fragile, and even a small incident could lead to further escalation. Understanding the regional context is crucial. The Caribbean Basin has long been a critical transit route for narcotics heading toward North America. U.S. Southern Command estimates that a significant percentage of cocaine bound for the United States passes through this area, often via go-fast boats or semi-submersibles. Because of this, Washington has invested heavily in maritime surveillance and interdiction operations. The current campaign is part of a wider counter-narcotics initiative involving multiple agencies, including the U.S. Navy, Coast Guard, and Drug Enforcement Administration. This interagency approach aims to disrupt smuggling networks at sea before they reach Central America or Mexico, where cartels can distribute the drugs further north. In Venezuela, the narrative is very different. State media often presents U.S. operations as acts of aggression, framing them as part of a broader strategy of regime change. This portrayal resonates with a population that has lived under sanctions and external pressure for years. Social media has amplified both narratives. Pro-U.S. commentators highlight the success of drug seizures, while Venezuelan accounts share footage of military drills with patriotic messaging. This information environment can be polarizing, making it harder for audiences to distinguish between signaling and actual preparation for war. Independent observers and journalists play a crucial role here. By providing verified, balanced reporting, they help prevent the spread of misinformation that could escalate tensions. For channels like this one, it is important to focus on facts and credible sources, avoiding sensationalism that could mislead viewers. Maintaining a calm and analytical tone is key. War news reporting carries responsibility. The goal is to inform, not incite fear or panic. That is why we emphasize data, timelines, and expert analysis rather than speculation or alarmist language. Looking ahead, several scenarios could unfold. The most likely outcome is a continuation of the current pattern: U.S. interdiction operations combined with Venezuelan military drills and strong rhetoric. This scenario allows both sides to achieve their political objectives without direct confrontation. A less likely but more dangerous scenario is accidental escalation. For example, if a Venezuelan patrol approaches a U.S. ship and misinterprets its actions, a confrontation could occur. Even a small exchange of fire could rapidly escalate due to the high military alert levels on both sides. Another possibility is diplomatic de-escalation. If back-channel talks succeed, Washington and Caracas could agree to confidence building measures that reduce tensions, such as notifying each other of operations near maritime boundaries or conducting joint anti- or drug patrols under international supervision. Finally, there is the scenario of external involvement. If other global powers step in with naval support or military aid to Venezuela, the situation could evolve into a wider geopolitical standoff. This is the least likely, but most consequential outcome, as it would raise the stakes significantly. In all cases, international monitoring and responsible reporting are essential. Global audiences need accurate information to understand whether the situation is heading toward conflict or stability. That is why continuous updates from credible sources are crucial, and why we will keep following this story closely for you. In conclusion, the events we are witnessing in the Caribbean are a reminder that maritime security is never static. The U.S. Navy's anti-smuggling operations are part of a long-term strategy to protect sea lanes and disrupt transnational crime. Venezuela's military exercises, while framed as defensive, highlight the heightened state of alert that now characterizes the region. Both sides are sending signals, and the international community is watching closely to see how these signals are interpreted. While the risk of open conflict remains low for now, the potential for miscalculation is real. This makes clear and factual reporting more important than ever. For viewers of this channel, the key takeaway is that we are in a period of heightened tension, but not yet at the brink of war. Keeping an eye on official statements, military deployments, and diplomatic initiatives will be essential in the coming weeks. If you found this analysis useful, don't forget to like the video, share it with others interested in global security, and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth coverage of military developments worldwide. Your engagement helps us bring you accurate, unbiased updates on critical issues affecting international peace and stability. Stay informed, stay critical, and see you in the next report. For Venezuela, however, the presence of U.S. warships so close to its shores is politically sensitive. The country has faced years of economic sanctions and strained relations with Washington, making any foreign military presence near its coastline a point of national pride and security concern. Caracas often frames U.S. operations as attempts at intimidation or regime change, and these narratives play strongly with its domestic audience. Neighboring countries are watching the situation closely. Colombia, a key U.S. ally in the region, has publicly supported maritime security efforts, while other nations have called for dialogue to avoid escalation. This highlights the delicate balance between law enforcement objectives and regional diplomacy. The next sections will explore how these developments impact global security calculations, including great power competition and the potential for unintended confrontations. One of the most significant implications of this standoff is its effect on global power dynamics. The United States, as the dominant naval power in the Western Hemisphere, sees freedom of navigation and counter-narcotics operations as central to its security interests. By demonstrating a willingness to act, Washington sends a message not only to cartels but also to rival states that it maintains control over key maritime routes. For Venezuela, however, this creates an opportunity to rally domestic support by portraying itself as resisting foreign interference. Maduro's government has historically used such incidents to consolidate internal political power, arguing that the country is under external threat. This rally around the flag effect can strengthen the government's position, especially at times of economic difficulty. Another dimension is the involvement of other global players. Russia and China have both expressed political support for Venezuela in the past, and any further escalation could open the door for them to provide diplomatic or even limited military assistance. This could complicate the situation further by transforming a counter-narcotics mission into a potential flashpoint for great power rivalry. Despite these risks, analysts believe that neither Washington nor Caracas seeks full-scale conflict. Instead, both sides are engaging in a form of strategic signaling. The U.S. wants to show that its anti-smuggling efforts will continue, while Venezuela wants to demonstrate that it can't not be intimidated. The challenge lies in ensuring that these signals do not lead to miscalculation or accidental clashes. Diplomatic channels remain open, although they are strained. The United Nations and the Organization of American States have both called for restraint, urging all parties to respect international law and avoid unnecessary escalation. Diplomacy is critical at this stage because maritime incidents can escalate quickly if not managed properly. Washington has reiterated that its operations are focused solely on criminal networks and are not directed against the Venezuelan state. U.S. officials have emphasized that the goal is to disrupt drug trafficking routes, not provoke conflict. However, the optics of warships operating near Venezuelan waters have made this message difficult to sell to the public in Caracas. Venezuelan diplomats, meanwhile, have filed formal protests accusing the United States of violating their sovereignty. They have also reached out to allies for political support, framing the issue as an example of unilateral U.S. action in Latin America. This diplomatic tug of war reflects a deeper challenge: how to balance law enforcement with respect for state sovereignty. Experts argue that confidence-building measures such as prior notification of operations, joint maritime patrols, or third-party monitoring could help reduce tensions. Ultimately, diplomacy is the most cost-effective way to prevent a military incident. If talks fail, however, there is always the risk that an unexpected event, such as a mistaken engagement or an overreaction at sea, could trigger a wider confrontation. That is why international observers are watching this situation closely. The economic dimension of this standoff should not be underestimated. The Caribbean region's maritime trade routes are vital not just for narcotics interdiction, but also for legitimate shipping. Escalating tensions raise concerns for commercial shipping companies, insurers, and regional economies that depend on maritime trade. If naval activity increases, some commercial operators may reroute or delay shipments, leading to higher costs. This is especially significant for energy exports, as Venezuela is still a major oil producer despite its economic crisis. Disruption of shipping lanes could create ripple effects in global oil markets, adding to price volatility. From a U.S. perspective, sustained operations require significant resources. Deploying warships, surveillance assets, and personnel on extended missions puts pressure on budgets and logistics. While Washington can sustain such operations, it comes at an opportunity cost. Those same assets could be needed elsewhere, such as the Indo-Pacific or Middle East. Venezuela, for its part, faces economic strain in maintaining a high state of military readiness. Fuel, equipment maintenance, and troop mobilization require funding that the cash-strapped government can ill afford. Analysts suggest that prolonged exercises could become financially unsustainable, forcing Caracas to scale back over time unless it receives external support. Thus, both countries have strong incentives to manage tensions carefully. A prolonged standoff benefits neither side economically. This reality could push decision makers toward negotiated solutions once the immediate signaling objectives have been achieved. Public perception plays a huge role in shaping how these events unfold. In the United States, narcotics operations generally enjoy bipartisan support, as they are seen as protecting American communities from dangerous drugs. The government is therefore incentivized to publicize successful interdictions as proof that taxpayer dollars are being well spent.